Trevor McGregor. Welcome to the Capital Raiser Show. How are you doing, man?
I am blessed and grateful, Ruben. Thanks for having me on.
Actually, I shouldn't call you man. I should call you coach. I love seeing you at these different events. I think I first saw you at Todd Dexheimer's event up in Minneapolis, and you had a cool presentation on the ladder to success. That was really, really good. I want to go back into your background. You have a lot of money and passive deals with some of your students, and we'll go into that. But I'm curious about on the personal development side, where was it in life that you decided this is something that I want to do? I mean, tell me about where you started that led you in that direction.
Well, it's a great question, and it's kind of a loaded question because it goes back to when I was a kid. I mean, I was always a kid that was turning over rocks and looking under things and understanding why things were the way they were. And, you know, that also played into human psychology. Why did one friend want to do something where another friend said, nope, I'm not doing that? And so, Ruben, at a very early age, I had one of those curious minds, and I started to really ask a lot of powerful questions. And I think I drove my parents nuts because I was the middle child. So I wasn't my older brother who was the trailblazer, and I wasn't my younger sister who was the baby of the family. I was somewhere in the middle. And so I think through my years, my teen years, my young adult years going into college, I always had this fascination. Why did people think and behave the way they did? And I'd listen to a lot of audios, I'd read books, you know, and as I got more and more familiar with this, I started to go to a lot of conferences. And that's, I think, where the personal development bug bit.
Okay, so what were the conferences that you were going to? I've always been curious, where did you learn some of these things? Because you mentioned in the podcast you did with Tyler Chester that you spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on personal development. So where was that money spent?
Well, that's a great question. That's an actual statistic. And Tyler's a very good friend of mine. He's a client of mine. He's a partner of mine. We're in a mastermind group together. And so he knows his way around the personal development arena as well. But it literally started out going to local conferences, you know, local real estate conferences, personal development meetups. From there, it really morphed into going to things like Tony Robbins. I would go and hang out at Millionaire Mind Intensives. I'd go to Money and You. And if you haven't studied Money and You, it's a phenomenal organization. From there, it really became going to Bob Proctor. I would go to John Assaraf's events, and John Assaraf was in the hit movie The Secret. And so I literally became a student of his and a client of his. In fact, I met my wife through that man. So at the end of the day, I started to go to all of these different events, you know, in Canada where I'm from. I'm from Vancouver, Canada, but I'd go down to California an awful lot. I'd go down to Colorado. I'd go to New York. I'd go anywhere where, you know, I felt I really wanted to learn from someone. And that has been, I guess, looking back at it now, one of the things that's allowed me to achieve the level of success I've done, because I've got a unique perspective on all of these different leaders and all of these different quote unquote gurus. But I believe that we're all our own guru, and we take a little bit of this and a little bit of that from each of these people, and we make it our own. And that's really what I've done.
So I went to this personal development course, like full blown. I think I spent around $15,000 on it. And it's still paying dividends today. It was called PSI Seminars. And one of the very last courses in Phoenix that I took was called Pacesetter Leadership Dynamics. It was a wealth consciousness course. For 90 days, we were enrolling people to join the program. We were raising money. I took bottom line to raise $100,000 that we were going to do a carnival for impoverished kids and take some of the cash and go down to Costa Rica, because wealth consciousness entails travel and being a citizen of the world. And we were going to go down there, and we actually repaired a school down there and gave them a bunch of supplies. It was crazy seeing the conditions that they were living in. They didn't even have a globe to see what the world looked like, you know? So that was really cool. In regards to wealth consciousness, let's go down that road a little bit. I'm not sure that I've heard you talk too much specifically about wealth consciousness, even though I know you are aware of it. What can you tell me about people's financial thermostat, or maybe stuff that you've learned from the Millionaire Mind?
Yeah, Ruben, thank you so much. It goes well beyond that. Again, you know, when you read books like Rich Dad, Poor Dad, you read books like Think and Grow Rich, which has been my Bible. I've read it over 50 times. I've listened to the audio hundreds of times. When you go to all of these different events like Millionaire Mind Intensive, even Tony Robbins, Money and You, Bob Proctor, you know, we really get a unique look at what has allowed people to go out there and achieve phenomenal levels of success. because my coach, my mentor, Tony Robbins, and I had the absolute pleasure of not only learning from him, but I went to work with and for Tony Robbins for half a decade as a master platinum coach. He said that success leaves clues. And it's one of my favorite sound bites from him, because people don't have to reinvent the wheel when it comes to wealth consciousness, or people don't have to reinvent the wheel about going out there and literally adding value to people so that money can become the byproduct of that value, right? So there's all these natural laws that govern this beautiful blue planet. And if we, get into the natural laws like the law of gravity, I mean, if you jump off the roof of your house, I guarantee you're going down. Well, there's laws of compensation that are actual laws. There's laws of circulation that are actual laws. And so I started to get a unique perspective on all of this at a very young age. And I started to not only, learn it, but apply it in my own life through real estate, through coaching, through consulting, through failing in business, and through succeeding in business. And literally, in addition to that, I've also had the unique opportunity to do over 25,000 coaching calls. Yes, that's an actual statistic. And these are with people from all walks of life, all levels of business, all over the planet, men and women, black, white, gay, straight, you name it. And what's amazing to me is I've been given a very unique lens to see through for what allows people to crush it in real estate, crush it in business. I coach Fortune 500 executives. I coach Olympic athletes. I coach franchise owners, VPs of business, lawyers, doctors, and all at the end of the day, there's a common thread that we're all here to add massive value to our community, to our fellow man and woman. And when you do that and you rinse and repeat it, you could create some pretty cool wealth in your life.
Anthony Robbins has a really cool program called Mastering Influence. It's been a while since I took it. It's just a CD course, but I really like that part of mastering influence over others is mastering influence over yourself.
Yeah.
So that's a really cool aspect of it. Can you tell me about some of the favorite lessons that you've learned from Anthony Robbins?
Oh my gosh, how much time do we have?
We have as much as you want.
I mean, Tony has been doing his fine work around the planet for over 40 years. He just turned 60 years old this year. And ultimately, I owe so much gratitude to that man because, again, he has been one of those people that's gone out and done this in over 100 different countries. He's looked at people every age been through whatever trauma they've been through, different kind of business ownership, whatever it is. And Tony is not just a life coach. He's a business strategist. And if there's one thing that comes out of Mastering Influence, or you go to Unleash the Power Within, or Date with Destiny, or any of his awesome courses, is you really learn that there's only two things that really go into it. The first part is your psychology. The second part is your strategy. So let's take a look at that, because your psychology is how you think, when it comes to doing something, whereas the strategy is like having a roadmap or recipe or a blueprint to go and do it. And he says that success is 80% psychology, 20% strategy. So when you ask what are the favorite things that I've learned from him, well, there's literally 3 little words that start with the letter S, as in superhero, that help you really do the psychology and the strategy. 2 of them are the psychology, 1 of them is a strategy, and they're as follows, because your psychology is really made up of your state and your story.
Yeah.
Right? And your state is your focus, it's your language, it's your beliefs, it's your values, and it's your rules. Whereas your story is your identity. It's, are you operating from your supervillain or your superhero? Right? Are you moving away from what you want, or are you moving towards what you do want? So as we align our state management and our story, which is really your focus and your identity, it literally gives you a unique perspective on where you're operating from. And it's then and only then, Ruben, that you can go out to the third S, which is the strategy. Because you never want to go work on a strategy if you're in a poor state and a poor story, right? You want to be in an optimal state and a story that is courageous. Maybe you are disciplined. Maybe you are being resourceful, whatever it is. Because when you show up with those first 2 S's, state and story, and take on the strategy, I'm telling you, anything becomes possible. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So one of the things that Tony taught me, I forget in which course it was, but to create a power move. So like before he goes on stage, he has this little ritual that he does to get him into the most vibrant, and then he starts auto-suggesting to himself the power that he can provide and the things that he can provide and the value. and all of that. So I created a power move, which was just, like I would, do that and then say, I'm powerful. And then I would do that whenever I needed to get into a really good state. What can you tell us about the power move, or do you do that yourself?
Of course I do. Yeah, you got to go back in history for, gosh, hundreds, if not thousands of years before men went off to war. They'd kiss their wives and pat the children on the head, and then they would get into their tribe and they would literally move their body and they would make sounds that would get them all fired up and ready for battle. So when we think about what you just did or what Tony does and any ritual, routine, or habit, when you engage the physiology, when you get the body and the mind and the movement and the sound going, it's a state changer. That's why when we put on a really kick-ass piece of music, we feel like dancing or drumming our feet or tapping our hands. And that's why we always say music is the ultimate state inducer. So having a power move is where you've got a neural anchor, whether it's beating on your chest or pumping your fist in the air, there's always something that you can do to get fired up so that you're getting ready to go out there and do what you're going to do.
That's so cool. All right. So I'm kind of curious. I want to talk about real estate, but I'm not ready to go quite there yet. So I want to know your mindset about how does spirituality play into things?
Well, spirituality can mean many different things. For some people, they might think that means religion. For some people, they might think that's energy. For some people, they might think universal laws. Some might think of the quantum field. And so I really do believe that there are forces, again, that govern every single thing on this beautiful blue planet. So if you really start to believe and read up on and participate in things like the law of attraction, universal intelligence, the quantum field, and you start to work with those laws, we often say that you're able to turn decades into days. That is, instead of you having to grind and work so hard to get stuff done, you can leverage infinite intelligence or the quantum field or the law of attraction to literally support you in moving forward with what it is that you want to move forward with. Does that resonate?
It does. So tell me more about this. Let's dive deeper though. So spirituality, Sure. You mentioned a couple things, law of attraction, and a lot of people relate law of attraction, even stuff from Think and Grow Rich, all interplays. What are your thoughts about manifestation, and do we have what it takes in here to bring things into reality?
Well, it's a great question. And I'm a bit of a brain scientist and a bit of a brain geek myself. And I read all the books. I go to a ton of conventions. I just spent 10 days with Dr. Joe Dispenza over in Italy. My wife and I were over in Italy with him, got to spend 10 days up close and personal, where we really understand that our thoughts are energy. And so what you think about is energy, no differently than if you think about something you don't want, or think about something you do want, it's going to go out into the unified field, into the ether, into the air. And just like a radio station, Ruben, can broadcast country music, rock music, classical music, and literally transmit that out into the air. Well, if you've got a radio or a transistor radio and you pick up on that rock music at 95.4 and country music at 103.6 and classical music at 87.2. So there has to be some sort of belief that if thoughts are energy, we are like electromagnetic switching stations that both broadcast and receive energy. And if thoughts are energy, then we are broadcasting and receiving thoughts. And that if you believe in where focus goes, energy flows, you can literally send out a message into the air, into the ether, to let the universe know what it is that you're looking to manifest. It's that simple.
What do you believe is a soul?
My own interpretation of a soul is that we are all here on purpose and with purpose to do two things: to learn and to grow, and then to share with other people. So if a soul is energy, right? Some people think it's the body. Some people think it's something outside the body. I think it's all one. And that's why I love the word universe, right? If you break that word into two, uni means one, verse means song. We're all singing the same song. We're all part of the same thing. So we have this soul, whether we are in this body or we're outside the body at death or whatever, but the soul is here to learn, to laugh, to love, to share, to experience, to grow. And I'm telling you that there's nobody on the planet that doesn't go through those different modalities, right? Some of us are going to live here till we're 100 years old, and some people are going to pass away when they're 40 or 50 or 60. And I don't really speak too much about what is good or bad anymore. I really do believe that everything happens on purpose and with
Yeah.
purpose. We may not be able to explain why certain things happen, but I believe that every electron and proton is operating in the unified field the way it's meant to right now. In fact, I can tell you that scientists have cataloged, over 10 million species on the planet. That's birds and fish and insects and animals and humans. And believe it or not, we are the only species that we know of that has what's been called dominion over. That means the power to choose. Whereas everything else operates under instinct or operates under natural principles. So the universe or God or source or creation or infinite intelligence, call it whatever you want, wouldn't have given Ruben and Trevor the opportunity to choose if we weren't meant to exercise that. So I find it fascinating as a human that we're here in one of the most amazing times to be alive, to use this little 3-pound mass between our ears called the brain to make choices that can either help us or hinder us. Does that make sense?
With the soul, I want to go down this road a little bit. You speak in my language because I studied chemistry. I have a degree in chemistry from Arizona State, and I studied a little bit about energy and started to intertwine what it meant on a spiritual level. What they say, some of the most basic principles of energy is that energy can neither be created nor destroyed. You mentioned that a soul is energy. So from that perspective, a soul can neither be created nor destroyed. Have you contemplated this concept of your soul has been here and will always be here before? Tell me, where was your soul before it ended up in Trevor?
Well, it's a great question. And again, there's a lot of people that think this is woo woo, right? But I'm telling you that even guys like Dr. Joe Dispenza, who's a medically trained doctor, and ultimately he really talks about how the soul or energy or brain waves that we believe exists in our 3-pound mass called our brain, we might actually have some of this available to us just outside in the unified field. That is where the brain is a bunch of electrical or chemical charges, right, of what's happened. And the more emotional and impactful some of the things that have happened to us are, we create stronger connections and stronger synapses and more energy. Like if I said to you, where were you on September 24th, 2006? You probably couldn't tell me. But if I said to you, where were you on, September 11th, 2001, I guarantee you could tell me. So really, I believe that as our thoughts become brainwaves and our brainwaves become energy, I think our soul is the same, that we perhaps float around or we come in and out of consciousness with the soul, whether it's in this lifetime, a previous lifetime, a future lifetime. But I really do believe in the concept that energy cannot die and energy cannot lie. And I had a coach once who said that if you take water and you put it in an ice cube tray and put that water into your freezer, the molecules of the water are going to become tightly packed together and that water is going to turn to ice. But if you take that ice out of the freezer and you put that ice cube into a frying pan on your stove and you turn up the burner, those little molecules of water, that energy is going to spread out and it's going to become water in the pan. And if you keep adding heat to that burner, that water is going to start to float up into the air as steam. That steam is vapor. It's going to go up into the atmosphere, into the clouds, rain down as water, so you can go and make ice cubes again and put it in your freezer. So again, it's a perfect example of how things are always changing and morphing. And I think our souls do that as well. I think that we have experiences, we have different experiences, unique experiences, but I don't ever think that those experiences die or lie or change. They just literally keep going on and on for some time.
You mentioned the word universe, and I kind of want to talk a little bit about that. I wrote down and prepared some things that I've studied from Dr. Wayne Dyer, who's one of my mentors, even though I've never met him. I always feel like he specifically was brought to life to help people like me learn from him, so I really appreciate all that he did for the community for so long before he passed. But he goes into the false concepts of the ego, and I'll bring this back into universe and oneness and connectivity to everything. So some of the false concepts of the ego are, I am what I have, I am what I do, meaning I am defined by my possessions or accomplishments. I am my reputation, which is like, I'm defined by what others think of me. I am separate from everyone else. I am separate from what I would like to attract into my life. And I'm separate from God. Now, if you remove the ego from the equation, then you and I are, if we're part of the universe, we're part of each other. We're part of the same system. Inside seminars, they do this interesting display where there's this old Hawaiian naval base where they would bomb it and bomb it and bomb it and turn black. And then there'd be people on the islands watching. And then, so you'd be this person underwater and seeing, and if you pull the plug out on the water, you'd see that the water would go down and that these two pieces of land are actually one. So you're bombing the same thing that you are actually a part of. Or there's an old ancient Indian saying that a tree that has branches that go to war with each other are foolish because they're the same tree. And we are part of this tree called humanity. What can you tell me about the connections or this approach of life, this philosophy of life of being connected, and how that changes and how that can be implemented into your everyday life?
Well, it's such a fascinating topic. And first of all, I'm quite impressed that we had the same mentor in Dr. Wayne Dyer. I mean, not only did I study all of Dr. Dyer's work, I got to spend some time with him. In fact, I got to see him on 2 occasions live. And I'm telling you, that man was special because he literally taught me that the ego stands for edging God out, right? And if you're edging God out, or you're edging the universe out, or you're edging whatever gave us this beautiful life, I wouldn't sign up for that class, because let's face it, something gave you this heart that beats almost 100,000 times a day, right? Something gave you this ability to take in oxygen and breathe with your lungs, and take in that oxygen and breathe out carbon dioxide. You didn't have to pay for it. You don't have to do anything with it other than to give thanks for it. And so Dr. Dyer really talks about, are we separate from each other, or are we literally what I said at the top of the call, which is part of the same universe, part of the same universe, part of the same song. And really what I loved about his work is he really makes you stop and think, are we really competing against each other, even in real estate? Or is there a fair and equitable, opportunity for there to be a win, and a win? And that's really how I approach real estate, is thinking about, well, how would Dr. Wayne Dyer approach it? Where the deal's got to be good for the seller, good for the buyer, good for the middleman, and everybody gets what they want. So the same thing applies in life. But if you've got these beliefs and these values and these rules that, you've got to win at all costs, or you've got to come out on top, or you've got to be superior, that would be like trees, like you say, growing, beside each other. And some of them saying, hey, my branches are belonging here. You can't have your branches over here. And tree branches cross over each other, and root systems cross over each other. Trees are meant to live in order and harmony. And guess what? So are we. And that's something that I'll always remember Dr. Dyer instilling in me, that, whether you're rich or you're poor, you're a man or a woman, you're short or you're fat, you're educated or uneducated, it's all irrelevant, because what matters is we're all here on purpose and with purpose to share our gifts. What do you think of that?
I like it. Wayne Dyer, let's go further along his lines. He started out in a younger age. He considered himself as a warrior, what he said, going after things. And then later in life, and he wrote his book, and you can kind of tell if you read his books that what he wrote about early in his life and what he wrote about later in his life had evolved and changed over time. And he became more and more spiritual and less interested in going out and being a warrior, or what he said, trying to become successful. When it comes to attracting things into your life, you can go out and hustle to get them, but you can also not worry about having to get those things, because you're not defined by your possessions or your accomplishments. And when you go into life and business from this perspective of, it doesn't matter what I have, it doesn't matter what people think of me, I can attract into my life whatever I want and be happy regardless of what I have. And everybody's definition of success is different. Some people would be happy with a couple $1,000s worth of passive income, and another person may need a couple million of passive income. What are your thoughts on this?
I love this. And let's go back to something you said, Ruben. We're probably Wayne Dyer's most famous words, which is I am. Anytime we use the words I am, it's like a territorial. I am X, I am Y. I'm a man, I'm a woman, I am Trevor. You know what? Those are just labels. And so you got to be very careful with whatever labels you put on something, while we're here on this earth, because we don't bring anything into this world and we're not going to take anything out of this world. It's really what we believe and perceive we're doing between, the year we're born and the year we die. So for the listeners that are listening that are going, okay, where's this conversation going? I think that we can all do ourselves a service, and that is to let go. And to let go isn't to be so anal about what we're collecting or how hard we're going to have to work to go get it. It's to really understand and appreciate that some people are going to go after money. Some people are going to go after a certain net worth. Some people are going to go after a certain number of doors. Some people are going to go after owning something so that they can be part of a community. And that is where we all go back to asking the most important question, which is, what is your why? What is your why? Why are you doing this in the first place? Why are you buying real estate? Why are you doing a podcast? Why did Dr. Wayne Dyer write the Erroneous Zones early in his career? And then he went on to be more of a spiritual guy in the later years, because he knew that it wasn't the material stuff that makes us happy, right? It's not the cars or the houses or the boats. It's none of that stuff. The money's great, but what really fuels us on the inside is when we as a species are growing and when we as a species are contributing. And if you folks out there can find a way to grow every day by listening to great podcasts like Ruben's, picking up great books, going to great conferences, traveling to other parts of this beautiful blue planet so that you can experience humanity.
So crucial.
That is what makes us happy. And that is where I'm telling you, that is where you get so much juice and zest for life that you just want to shout it from the rooftops. Does that resonate with you?
It certainly does. Tell me, are you a fan of Wallace Wattles?
Big time fan of Wallace Wattles. In fact, if you look at my Facebook header, it's got a quote from Wallace Wattles right now. So it's funny that you and I are bringing up all of these same folks, yet we haven't talked before we started the interview about any of this.
No, we have not prepared for any of this. I'm curious about one thing. So he talks about the competitive state. He also talks about you can attract things from the ether by placing your thoughts on them with a certain intention. But one of the things that he talks about is a competitive spirit. Pretty much every single person that I've asked to come on this show has said yes, until 2 days ago, one person said no. And I was very curious about that. But he saw me as his competition. He has a raising capital system. And I explained to him that we're creating a system. We are calling it the Capital Raiser Machine, that we could sell to other people. He declined coming on my show. He's like, I'm not going to share my secrets with you so that you can take them and share them, sell them somewhere else. And I was like, oh, okay, that's interesting. I had never been denied access to somebody coming on my show. What can you tell me about the spirit of competition from your experience and what you've read? Can you be successful in that place? Tell us more about that. You probably have some insight.
Oh my God, do I have insight? I geek out over this stuff in a good way, because guys, there's only two positions that you're going to be in. You're either going to be in expansion or you're going to be in contraction. And let's just face it. When I talk about there's only two things on this planet that we need to do to feel fulfilled, that is to grow and to contribute. Well, you can't really grow and contribute if you're thinking, oh my God, what if Ruben steals my IP? Or, oh my God, what if Ruben shares my secrets? Because that's a form of contraction. You want to stay in what I call expansion, because let's face it, the universe is abundant. There's more air for everyone. There's more love for everyone. There's more money available, as long as you're adding value to people so that money can become the byproduct. But the only way you're going to absolutely go out there and create the life you want is if you stay in absolute expansion rather than contraction. And when you really think about Napoleon Hill in the book Think and Grow Rich, and how he talks about having a definite chief aim or a white hot desire, that's God's way, or the universe's way, or infinite intelligence's way of putting a desire on your heart so that you go out there and you fulfill that desire. In fact, if you look up the Latin root of the word desire, it means of the Father, of God, of source, of creation, of infinite intelligence. And so as human beings, we all have different desires. Some want to do art, some want to do music, some want to raise children, some want to go out there and crush it in business like Elon Musk. I mean, there's a guy who's committed, decisive, coachable, resourceful to do whatever it takes to build Tesla or SpaceX or Solar City, or now he's boring holes underneath cities. It's his boring company. So really, we're all here, whether we're, Oprah Winfrey, Wayne Dyer, Richard Branson, Steve Jobs, we're all given a desire on our heart because that's how the universe wants us to go out there and just absolutely unleash it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, man, that's very cool. So let's go into chief aim. One of the words that you used, your why. I don't think a lot of people know what they want. So how can they have a why before they even know what they want? In your coaching that you do and in the calls that you do you find that most people don't even know what they want?
It's absolutely true. And my man, Tony Robbins, says, without a vision, people perish. That is, if you don't have a big, fat, compelling reason why you get up in the morning, what the hell are you getting up for? People think it's got to be some singular purpose. It's not. Your why might be multifaceted. It might be your children that inspire you. It might be your siblings, your parents. Maybe you see what Oprah is doing. I mean, if you do Oprah Winfrey's story, and some people do and some people don't, but the chances of her becoming a billionaire, or the chances of J.K. Rowling, she's the one that wrote Harry Potter. I mean, she was living in her car, writing stories on the back of napkins, and people told her to quit writing about a sorcerer named Harry. Nobody wants to read that shit. Go get a real job. But she had a desire placed on her heart, just like Oprah had a desire to help humanity, just like Elon Musk wants to take people to Mars, just like Steve Jobs wanted to invent the computer. We all have been given this unique opportunity, but to know is just not enough. You've got to take that desire and go out there and take intelligent and inspired action. And that's where having that why is important, because when times get tough, and they will, when you run into an obstacle, and you will, when you run out of money on pursuit of what you want, and you might, you've got to have a why so strong that it helps you go over or under or around or through whatever obstacles in front of you. And if you don't have that why, people quit, people stop. People take the path of least resistance. They sit on the couch and they watch Netflix. And I'm telling you, no dream was ever inspired by sitting on the couch. You got to get up and take action. What do you think of that?
I want to dive deeper into that specific topic using compelling reasons, right? So you were talking about creating your why. Once you have your why, then you really reinforce it and bring to life these things called compelling reasons that you probably teach to your clients, right? You can't go and get these things without the compelling reasons. So how do you extract those reasons from them? What is the process you take them through?
Well, it's my proprietary secrets, Ruben. I can't tell you because I don't want you to share them.
Awesome.
No, it's totally the opposite. I'd love to share this because you know what? It's fascinating to look at whatever we go out there and do, we do because of our beliefs, our values, and our rules. Now let's back up and let's think about that for a minute. Where did we get those beliefs? Where did we learn those values? When did we come up with these rules? Well, I'm here to tell you that we did it as a toddler. So from about the time we're 2.5, 3 years old, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, by the time you're 12 years old, you've formulated 95% of your beliefs, your values, and your rules. And I'm telling you, it's fascinating to see that, man, some of that programming that we got come from our parents. And where did they get it, Ruben? Well, they got it from our grandparents, their parents. And these are people that lived in the 20s and the 30s and the 40s. They went through world wars. They went through depression. They didn't have much. So for us to think that we can go out there and be, do, and have everything we ever want, that gets squashed because we're told to stop daydreaming, sit up, pay attention, get in line, raise your hand in school. And it really absolutely shit kicks what I call creativity. And that's why we don't allow our children to ever be told what to do by a teacher. In fact, we homeschool predominantly where we're doing creative things. And we travel no less than 6 times a year internationally to take our kids around the world. I mean, my little guy, Max, he's 4 years old. He's got more passport stamps in his passport than most adults do by the time they die. Because my wife Lisa and I believe in giving them experiences over stuff. That is, we could buy the houses and the cars and the iPads and all that crap. But what really matters is going out there and really seeing how humanity operates. And so when we go back to having those beliefs, values, and rules, well, when would now be a good time to check in?
I love that.
Right? And maybe uninstall. Like, let's say it was a floppy disk that you had at the age of 10. Well, let's hit the eject button and pull that out. And it's time to install some new stuff that's going to help you to be, do, and have what's on your heart. What do you think of that?
I think that programs, that's a good way to approach programming, is not to erase the programs, but to write new programs that become so much more powerful that they take the forefront over your limiting beliefs that might be your old program. I really like
That's it. And the number one way to do that is to ask better questions. Ask better questions, because our brain is like Google. Whatever we ask of it, it's going to return. And unfortunately, most Americans are out there walking around going, why am I so broke? Or why am I so fat? Knowing that 54% of America is obese right now. Or why am I so lonely? Or why can't I get along with my spouse? Well, if those are the questions you're asking your brain all day, the brain is going to return the answer. Why am I so broke? Well, because you spend all your money. Why am I so fat? Because you eat like a pig. Why am I so lonely? Well, you're rude to your significant other. Versus asking empowering questions like, why am I so abundant? Right? Why am I so healthy? Why am I in such a loving relationship with my spouse? And again, these questions convey emotions. And I'm telling you right now, Ruben, your emotions are going to dictate the quality of your life. So if you're not living in a positive emotional home right now, or let's say your emotional home is one of doubt, fear, worry, anxiety, now's the time to put a for sale sign on that emotional home and sell that and move into a beautiful home where you're full of courage, possibility, determination, playfulness. Because again, you can have it any way you want, because a big soundbite that I'm often heard saying on shows is the only reason why you don't have what you want is because of the story you tell yourself why you can't have it, right? And as human beings, we tend to rationalize. That means if we break that word into two, we tell ourselves rational lies. We lie to ourselves all the time why we can't have something, or why we can't own something, or why we can't travel somewhere. It's a bunch of crap. We tell ourselves a whole bunch of BS. And I know you've been to some of my keynotes where BS, stands for bullshit, but it also stands for belief systems. It's time to upgrade our belief systems so that we can step into the right state and story, along with the strategy to go out there and crush it in life. What do you think?
I dig it so far, man. In regards to the energy system, the way that you surround yourself with certain things, some people call it feng shui, I think, or something like that. But Wayne Dyer used to say that, he would have a prayer from St. Francis or something on the wall, and people would see him and say, why do you have that on the wall? Nobody's ever going to read that. And he talked about the energy, that every single thing has energy, even the words. And every time that his kids walk by it, and the way that you organize your house, the energy system. And he even talks about this book. I forget the author. It's called Power versus Force, where you can actually take a banana or something organic and put it next to your heart, and then put this, your arm out and then push down on it, and it won't budge. But as soon as you take something of low energy, like a rhapsody that talks about murder, and then you put that by your heart, he used to have fun with his son and then make him do this. And then he would put the rhapsody next to his heart and his arm would collapse. Have you heard of this book?
Yeah,
I think it's
David Hawkins. David Hawkins is the one that wrote the book, but I've actually been muscle testing with Wayne Dyer, and it's fascinating. You can literally hold a beautiful organic vegetable or fruit in your hand. Or what Wayne did that night is he held a bottle of water, a beautiful bottle of fresh water in a glass container. And we literally will push down on his arm, and that arm will stay strong as an ox. But the minute that Wayne Dyer took a can of Coca-Cola and he put it in his hand, and we pushed on that same arm, even with the same resistance he had, that arm would drop like a weight. And so we often talk about Dr. Emoto's work. If you're familiar with
Yeah,
Dr.
I wanted to
Emoto's
go
work.
down that road.
Right.
For sure.
Dr. Emoto, for your listeners that haven't studied him, well, he took these water droplets and he studied them under an electron microscope. And the way that he did this is some of the, beakers of water and bottles of water, he wrote love, peace, and joy on. And then these other, beakers and bottles of water, he wrote hate and ugly and really, negative phrases or negative words.
I will kill you.
Right? I will kill you. And he literally allowed those to sit. And then he looked at little droplets of water from the positive message bottles and the negative message. And the positive ones were beautiful crystals, like snowflakes, all symmetrical and beautiful and shaped nicely. And I swear to God, the negative messages, those were horrible looking little crystals, right? And they were disheveled and they were deformed. And it just goes back to the fact that Wayne Dyer, I believe that everything is energy. And that's why we say you got to stand guard at the door of your mind and be very careful with what you're thinking and saying, especially if we go back to what I just said, that what you think and you say creates, a thought. That thought becomes an emotion. That emotion is either going to help you or hinder you. And I'm telling you, it's our emotions that cause us to fall in love. Our emotions cause us to start wars. Our emotions cause us to buy real estate. Our emotions cause us to turn on a podcast or turn off a podcast. So wherever you're living emotionally, you want to check in with that and really go back to what David Hawkins is saying, or the muscle testing, or Dr. Emoto's work. Because, if it was just one person talking about this, that would be a one-off. But Ruben, this is universal. And even, my man, Dr. Joe Dispenza, he has dedicated his life to really looking at how our thoughts enter different brainwaves. So you're either in a beta brainwave, an alpha, a theta, a delta, or a gamma. And I'm telling you, at different levels of thought and different levels of brainwave, he says that you can literally access the quantum field. You can literally access infinite intelligence. So the deeper you go with brainwaves, the more you're going to have this connectivity or connection to help speed up what it is that you want. And that's when we get into quantum physics. And I just love talking about that stuff.
Before we go on, in regards to what you're talking about with Dr. Emoto, there's this documentary. It's called What the Bleep Do We Know Down the Rabbit Hole? And I recommend, if you're interested in finding out more about this work and what it actually looks like to see these formations of the water molecules as they freeze under an electron microscope, go to YouTube and do a search for the trailer for What the Bleep Do We Know? And you'll get to see what we're talking about. That's really cool stuff. Man, there's so many things that I want to talk about, like placebo effect. You had mentioned brain waves and going down into the beta state. I do certain types of meditation or yogas. I forget what kind of yoga it is that will actually take you into a beta wave, and it's almost like a meditation. Do you do any meditation yourself?
I meditate every morning. I get up at 4:44 every morning without fail. It's just part of my identity. It's not that I struggle to do it. I don't have to set an alarm to do it. I've just conditioned my mind and body. I get up early and do the things that other common people aren't willing to do, right? So when everyone else is getting up at 6:30 or 7, they're smacking their alarm, they're rolling out of bed, their feet hit the floor and they go, "Oh God, it's morning." My feet hit the floor and I say, "Good morning, God. Thank you for another chance to get up and condition my mind and condition my body for success." So I literally get up. I have a glass with fresh squeezed lemon in it, a glass of water with lemon, and then I sit down for a 30-minute meditation. And it's there that I condition my mind. After that meditation is over, I do a little bit of a workout, whether that's on my elliptical, my yoga ball, some free weights, some stretch bands, whatever that is. Then I condition my body. And then I will sit and I will get into what we call an attitude of gratitude. I will literally sit for 10 or 15 minutes and just ask myself, what am I grateful for in the moment? Well, I'm grateful for this roof over my head. I'm grateful for the food in my refrigerator. I'm grateful for my wife, Lisa, and my 3 boys, Matthew, Mitchell, and Maxwell. Yes, we went with the M theme, and our last name's McGregor. So when I give thanks for Lisa, the boys, my body, my tenants, you literally change the heart-brain coherence where you just feel different, right? And once you do a little bit of gratitude work, you then want to do a few minutes of what we call forgiveness work. That is, what are you hanging on to that it's time to let go of? who are you pissed off at? Where, being pissed off at them any longer is like drinking poison and expecting your enemy to die. Like, we're all carrying around baggage. It's my invitation to you and the listener to just spend a few minutes in gratitude every day, spend a few minutes in forgiveness and let go of stuff. And then ultimately, the third part of that is self-care. And self-care for me is making a great hot cup of coffee. I make bulletproof coffee, or I've got, again, another glass of lemon water. I set myself up, for the day in my office. I have a beautiful view overlooking the Pacific Ocean here in Vancouver, and I literally am ready to take on the day. And most people aren't. Most people get up, they run through the shower, they rush the kids through breakfast, off to school, they get down at work, they sit down at their desk and they go, where should I start? Well, my day starts at 4:44, even on weekends, and it gives me what I call the competitive edge to set up my day for success. And then people often say, well, what time do you go to bed? Well, I go to bed around 9:30, 10 o'clock every night. I sleep very, very well, and I get up and I rinse and repeat every day.
I remembered the name of the yoga that I do. It's called Yoga Nidra, and they actually take you through. Have you done this before? Are you familiar with it?
No.
Yoga Nidra, it's like a guided meditation. It's not really even yoga at all. You're just like on a mat, and then somebody's talking to you, driving you into a place. Some people use other techniques to get you down here. Like some people call it hypnotherapy or NLP. It's the same kind of concept where in Yoga Nidra, they take you down into your beta waves. And I practice, if I can get down here and still be somewhat kind of half awake and half asleep, practice this thing that you call praying from a place of gratitude, as if you've attracted the things that you already want in your life, which is a great way to manifest. According to Wayne Dyer, he has a book called Meditations for Manifesting. And I literally believe that I manifested my wife through the procedures that I originally got from a book by Napoleon Hill called The Master Key to Riches, where he has you write this declaration statement. And I wrote down a full description of my wife. And through Wayne Dyer's work, I learned to pray for that person from a place of gratitude as if she was already there, like she was already connected to me, she was already in my life. And sure enough, I was able to attract her. I know that it's her, it's so amazing.
Congratulations. Absolutely.
Tell me about this concept of praying from a place of gratitude in order to attract the things that you want.
Well, it's a universal concept that's been around for thousands and thousands of years. I mean, if you look at the modern guy, Dr. Joe Dispenza, he really talks about how you're literally living in gratitude and giving thanks ahead of the occurrence. That is where you feel it so viscerally. You can see it, you can feel it, you can taste it. Whether that is the car you want or the money you want, the relationship you want, the healthy body you want. When you get in alignment and you get those beta brainwaves to drop into alpha, then theta, then delta, you literally change the torus field, which is really the vibration of the body. And you can literally, he says, speak to infinite intelligence, which is probably what you did that got your wife to come to you, But we can go back thousands of years. If you look at what Dr. Wayne Dyer talked about, he studied a man that was named Lao Tzu. And Lao Tzu is literally Dr. Dyer's, mentor, even though he died 2,000 years ago. In the translation, I think of Lao Tzu means little man or wise man or something, but he literally came up with the Tao Te Ching. And there's 80 some verses of the Tao Te Ching, which literally are universal principles that still apply today. So if you think of that some little Chinese guy was doing this 2,000 years ago, and you've got Dr. Joe Dispenza doing it now, it's nothing new. That the laws of vibration, the laws of frequency, the laws of amplitude are all in play today, just like they were back then. And that we can literally, start to condition, like you through your yoga, what it is that we want by feeling the feelings ahead of the occurrence and creating what we call a vision of the future from that place, instead of creating it from a memory of the past. That is, most people step into their past to try to create. Well, you can't create from back here. You've got to create from here so that you can go there. And I'm a big believer in this stuff. Again, it goes back to what Napoleon Hill's book was about, in having that definite chief aim, that white hot desire, being 3 feet from gold and giving thanks ahead of the occurrence. So I'm not surprised that you have latched onto this. And for the people that I know that have absolutely studied this, but you can't just study it, because to know is not enough. I mean,
Right.
if it was just the information alone, every librarian in the US would be a multimillionaire. It's not the information, it's the application of the information that's important. And some people might say this is far too woo-woo, but brain science, and if you look at all of the data mapping of what Dr. Dispenza is doing to back this up with brain scans, when we get into these different brain waves and where the frontal lobe lights up and the cortexes of the brain light up, it's fascinating to see that, man, we can literally, manifest and bring into our lives what it is that we think about.
Absolutely. And there's another book that I read, I believe by Joseph Murphy, called The Power of Your Subconscious Mind. Have you read that one? Yeah,
Phenomenal book. Everyone should read that book.
That is a great book. That one really started me on the autosuggestion. That in conjunction with, I believe it's chapter 4, autosuggestion and Think and Grow Rich.
Yep.
He actually talks about, Joseph Murphy, this thing called the placebo effect. What the placebo is, I think everybody's familiar with it, but let's refresh everybody. People, when they don't know if they're receiving something that can make them better or not, if their mind believes that they're going to heal from the medicine, they actually heal even if they're not taking the medicine. Or there was an experiment that Wayne Dyer talked about where there was an orthopedic surgeon and he went in and pretended to do surgeries on a bunch of people. He put them under, he splashed water, he made sounds like he was cutting things, and then he basically formed a small incision and then sewed it back up and then sent these guys off as if they had a full-blown surgery. And like within months, these guys were playing basketball again after years of not being able to use their knees. This concept of the placebo, or of your mind believing that you are healing, that your mind can heal itself, is very powerful, but it can do a lot of other things. And that's where I think autosuggestion is very important too, because the mind and the subconscious can be molded and shaped through autosuggestion by constantly repeating these concepts into your mind, or even just believing that they are real when in fact they're not. Like the medicine that you're getting, you're not really getting it. What are your thoughts on this particular concept?
Well, again, my brother, Dr. Dispenza wrote a great book, You Are the Placebo. And, in that he references giving somebody a sugar pill or giving somebody real medicine. And the study that you're referring to with the arthroscopic knee surgery, it was done on two groups of, men, 75 men here and 75 men here. And they all needed arthroscopic surgery. And that first group actually got the surgery where they went in and the incision was made into the knee and they had full-blown cartilage surgery in there. You're right. They made a small incision, right? They splashed around a bunch of salt water there, sewed them up, sent them all home. And would you believe that the group that did not have the surgery, the placebo group, actually healed faster? And yes, we're playing more basketball than the group that actually had the surgery. So
Crazy.
Again, you got to go back to what you said earlier, that the brain is a very powerful tool. And scientists have cataloged that we're literally only using a very small part of it. In fact, out of 100% option to use the brain, we're only using about 5% consciously right now. And they say up to 95% of it is all subconscious. So when you really think about that, autosuggestion, placebo, sugar pill, is it possible that introducing something to the subconscious is going to get taken in by the subconscious, and while you're sleeping, while you're awake, while you're driving, the subconscious is always working, always working, always working, always working, where it will literally start to take on a belief of something being real? Because again, it's like a sexual fantasy. If you close your eyes, you can't tell if something is happening in real life or if your brain is just giving you images and audios and pictures of it. Well, the same thing is true in all forms of placebo. And we're starting to see how it's absolutely redefining medicine as we speak.
That's so cool, man. I love that you knew the exact same story that I was talking about. How about this? How about we go into, do you believe it's important to have a declaration statement or something written out, or to write down the things that you want to attract or achieve or get in your life? Do you read one? Do you have one?
Oh, I got more than one, Ruben. I mean, Tony's old quote was, the people that fail to plan, plan to fail. And so you want to write down your goals. You want to have a vision board. You want to literally record what it is that you want back into your smartphone and have music behind it so that you can hear back
I
as
haven't
if
heard
you've
that.
already really, impressing it into the subconscious mind. So, as I look around my office, I've got Post-it notes and vision boards and whiteboards and goal setting books and goal achievement books. And, it's funny because you talk about manifesting your wife. I believe I manifested my wife, Lisa. And literally within the first week of us knowing each other, I presented her with an 8.5 by 11 vision board of what our future life was going to look like together when we got married, when we had boys, when we traveled the planet, when we had certain amount of money. And I'll swear to you that this entire vision board, every single thing that was on that vision board in the week one has come true. And we've been together for decades. So I'm telling you, it's powerful that, again, what the mind can conceive and believe, it can achieve, right? It's like if you take the first 3 letters of the alphabet and you say it backwards, instead of ABC, it's CBA. What the mind can conceive and believe, it will achieve. It's like that old Henry Ford quote. Whether you think you can or think you can't, you're right. But I'm telling you, the environment is what we're talking about here. So having your goals in front of you, reviewing them daily, carrying a recipe card in your pocket with what your goals are, and literally stopping and reading them out loud multiple times a day.
Mm-hmm.
I'm telling you, this is where the rubber meets the road. What do you think?
Yeah, I wrote a declaration statement and it's long. I revisit it and change it, and it's been going on since I think 2003 was when I first wrote this little paragraph, and now it's like 8 pages long.
Nice.
And it goes over everything, like how I want to contribute, the things that I want. And then I write down my goals, things that I want to do like on a regular basis. For example, like be a good husband, attract co-GP partners, listen to spiritual audio, what my exact ideal weight is, weigh 198, clean your house, be at peace, manifest desires, lower metabolic age, sleep 7 hours. I have all this stuff written down right here. And that's just like part of the list. Be humble, do your best, never give up, don't judge. I love all of those things, and I love having them written down just right here in my podcast studio. And I have similar things at home too. And I love the vision board too. It's been a while since I updated mine. I want to go home and start putting up some photos of the kids that we want to manifest into our lives. We want to have kids, my wife and I.
It's awesome.
Okay, so speaking of kids, you have 3 boys, right?
I have 3 boys that we've been blessed with, Matthew, Mitchell, and Maxwell. And before we go into your question, I just want to honor you for that. And I really want to invite you as you get ready to update your manifesto or your goals or your vision board, come from it from a place as if, it's already happened, where I would write my goals, and I do write my goals. And it starts out like this: I am so grateful for the fact that, right? So I'm so grateful for the fact that I own X number of doors, or I'm so grateful for the fact that I've got this incredible net worth, or I'm so grateful for the fact that I get to give and tithe to the church and charity, or I'm so grateful for the fact that I get to travel internationally no less than 6 times a year. And when you come from a place of gratitude, I mean, I don't know if you know this, Ruben, but the human brain can't be in a state of gratitude and a state of fear at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
It's physiologically impossible. So writing your goals from a place where your ego or your gremlins or your saboteurs can't go, that's ridiculous or that's stupid, gives you the competitive edge when goal setting and goal achieving. What do you think of that?
I dig it. And it sounds like Bob Proctor. I think I stole his line. I am so happy and grateful now, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
You got it. Yeah. And Bob is a good Canadian man, just so everybody remembers.
Oh, true that. True that.
We gotta get our good Canadian man, Bob Proctor, in there. But yeah, I mean, writing it as if it's already done and you're grateful for it can go a long way when speaking it into existence.
Contemplate yourself as having attracted the conditions you wish to have in your life. Something like that. That's one of Wayne's things that he talks about all the time. And the other thing, what is the one where he says, the way you look at things change, or what is that one? Do you remember?
I remember everything.
If you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change.
There, we said it in unison. That's Wayne's most famous quote, which is absolutely true. And ultimately, most people don't change the way they look at things. They're myopic. They operate with these blinders on. And sometimes a little bit of perspective can go an awful long way.
That's so cool. All right. So my question though was in regards to your kids, what kind of stuff do you teach them? Are they set up to be, are they going to be real estate investors? Do you have them manifesting things? You have them doing personal development type stuff? Are they into that? Are they just in their own world in corporate America? Are they going to be entrepreneurs? I want to hear about what kind of ways that they grew up in terms of mindset. You know, what did you teach them?
So first off, I'm very proud of all my kids. And, obviously my older kids, are a little bit more well-versed in personal growth than say Maxwell, he's 4. But yeah, my kids, I mean, when I would literally drive to my different rental properties and the kids were little, we'd literally drive on the first of every month and we would collect rent either by check or by cash. Right? This is back before electronic rents were paid. And literally we would have a CD that played everywhere we drove, whether it was to collect rent, to Little League baseball, to hockey games, to soccer. So they grew up listening to Tony Robbins audios. They grew up listening to Jim Rohn. They grew up listening to Dr. Wayne Dyer. And my kids today can recite passages from Think and Grow Rich without even having to read the book or listen to the audio. So when you ask, how are we conditioning these young minds? We are really conditioning them to think and behave a lot differently than, say, your average parents out there. In fact, we very much limit the access to screens and the access to video games because Tony once said that even watching too much television, he called that the electronic income reducer. And we want our kids to be able to go out there and literally become whatever they want to be. I mean, if they want to be entrepreneurs, great. If they want to go to higher levels of learning, great. But they're already investing in real estate. They're already investing in different stocks. I mean, my wife, Lisa, and I are impact investors, and we believe that real estate is one of the greatest wealth vehicles on the planet. But we also want to pump some of our money into some very, very cool causes and charitable things. So ultimately, there's all of that. But even my wife, she just literally released her children's book last month. And it's very cool. I have to share it. It's for kids and it's called A New Alphabet for Humanity. Now, what's really good about this children's book is we hired a world-class illustrator out of Europe. And she's one of the best in the world, very expensive, but very good at what she does. And instead of having, lessons in the book where A is for apple, or B is for ball, or C is for cat, or D is for dog, my wife got inspired walking at the beach one day and said, how can I teach my son words that are more important? And she got this download from the universe to go out there and rewrite the children's alphabet where A is now for abundance, and B is for bravery, and C is for compassion, and D is for diversity, and E is for empathy, and it goes all the way to Z or Z.
Beautiful.
And we've got these world-class illustrations of children all over the planet doing acts of kindness, and doing crazy things. So if anyone's interested in picking up a copy of that book, you can just Google search it or go to anewalphabetforhumanity.com or A New Alphabet. And, part of the proceeds, Lisa and I are donating to charity. But I'm telling you, can you imagine, Ruben, if we start teaching kids these words at an early age?
Mm-hmm.
Can you imagine how differently they'd grow up when they start understanding about, empathy and diversity and, all of these cool words. What's really cool is we've got a poster that goes along with it. We're currently working on a curriculum for the school system and a whole bunch of other things. But, we wouldn't be able to do this if we weren't inspired by the likes of Wayne Dyer and Oprah Winfrey and Tony Robbins and, all of these people that have gone before us because, you never know where you're going to show up and make a massive difference. And that's why I honor you for doing this podcast, because you never know who's listening. And it could be one little thing you and I talk about where you go, wow, that's pretty cool, that inspires them to go start a home-based business or inspires them to write a book or inspires them to make their first real estate investment. Because you know what? That's where it's at. It's literally learning and getting engaged, enrolled, and inspired from others that we often, find that inspiration or that entheos, which means from the spirit within.
Mm-hmm. I
love it within everyone else, and then we capture some of it and go out and apply it.
How about we go into a little bit about your background? You used to want to be a hockey player. Let's go back into who Trevor McGregor is and then how you got into real estate. I'm curious, Now that people have listened for an hour, let's give them what they came for and talk about some real estate and some capital raising. Tell us your background, how you got into real estate.
Well, again, I'm a Canadian. And if you know any Canadian boy, I mean, my dad had us on skates, my brother and I, at the age of 3 and 4. So when you grow up in Canada, all you want to do is play sports. And for us, that was hockey. And so I always had this vision of being an NHL hockey player. And I played, growing up, and I was a pretty good hockey player, often the captain of my team. And, I could put the puck in the net. But Ruben, I never just grew in my teenage years to have the size of what it takes to play in the bigger leagues. And so I figured out, since, playing in the NHL wasn't going to work, well, maybe I should go off to university and study. And that's exactly what I did. After high school, I went and studied business, studied marketing and HR and finance and a whole bunch of really cool subjects. And then I went to work in corporate, just like most people do. Went off to work, for a company that did hospitality. They literally did retail. They did a whole bunch of things. And I literally became their executive director of operations. And so literally throughout my entire 20s and right before I turned 30, I literally was, in charge of about 500 people, doing a whole bunch of different things in 5 major cities in Canada. And it was around that time that the owners of the organization said, "Wow, Trevor, we really love having you here. We want to give you an opportunity to invest in the organization." And I thought, wow, we're about to go on a big expansion spree. I'd be happy to. And so what I did is I scraped together all of my savings. I cashed in my 401k. I even convinced my own parents to take out a second 6-figure mortgage on the family home. And I just absolutely dumped all of this money into this expansion. And I was literally about to turn 30, and I was literally about to say, I'm going to retire rich and young. And for the first year and a half, things went really well. But I'm telling you, in 2001, when those planes hit the towers in New York, we were expanding so fast. We were expanding way too big. We had pumped way too much money into this expansion. Without going into a bunch of detail, I ended up losing all of that money that I put into the expansion. I mean, there I was, married. I was broke. I started to gain weight from, just not being sure what I was going to do. And so, man, I was really down on myself. So what does anybody do when they're down and out? Well, they seek guidance. And for me, thank God, I hired a coach. I hired this local coach here in Vancouver. And what he said to me was, "Trevor, what's happened to you is really unfortunate. And I wish it didn't happen to you, but, you're still a young man. You can get up, dust yourself off, and find another way to keep on keeping on." And I said, "But I don't know how I'm going to pay back all of these failed loans, let alone pay my parents back."
What about the coach? How were you going to pay him? How did you hire him? You were broke.
I was introduced to him through another colleague of mine. And so at that moment in time is where the most influential part of my life totally switched and changed, because he said, "Well, have you ever thought of investing in real estate?" And I said, "Real estate? I don't know anything about real estate." And he said, "Well, you can literally use real estate, which is using other people's money to get in and buy something and literally redevelop it and then sell it and then make a profit and rinse and repeat and rinse and repeat and rinse and repeat." And I said, "But I don't have any money to do that." He said, "You can borrow it from other people." And so, Ruben, at the end of the day, that's what I did. I literally said, I don't have any other way to do this. I've got to pay back these failed loans. I got to pay back my parents. So I just absolutely believed in this guy and went after and did what he said to do. And I saved together a little bit of money, and I literally bought my very first townhouse. And that was a really good experience because Vancouver was going through a radical appreciation. And I took the money out of that and I bought my first condo. So there I was, learning the ins and outs in real estate and tenants and toilets and repairs and all of this stuff. And then it was then that I had leverage in those 2 properties where I bought my first duplex. And I don't know about you, but that's when I discovered what cash flow really was. I mean, have you ever discovered cash flow? It's like a whole new world open up. And so I leveraged that properly and I bought another duplex and another duplex. And then I bought a 4-plex and another 4-plex. I would go to the bank. I would get lines of credit. I would ask people if I could tap into their lines. I mean, I did whatever it took. I would stay up late at night putting in toilets. I would paint walls. I would seed lawns and make things look good. And again, Vancouver was going through a massive, appreciation because there was a lot of Chinese influence and people were moving from China. and literally buying up real estate left, right, and center. And I'm proud to say that in just 2.5 years, not only did I make enough money to pay off all of those failed loans, I paid off my parents in full, and I still had a beautiful cash flowing real estate portfolio on the side of it. So that's when people started to come to me and say, Trevor, how are you doing this? And I said, well, this is how you do this, and this is how you do that. And it was literally my son's coach from his team that said, hey, would you sit down and show my wife and I exactly the blueprint you're using? And I said, well, buy me a beer. I'd be happy to. And we sat down, and 3 hours later, not only did they have a blueprint to go out and do it, but within 1 week's time, they went and bought their first rental property. And then they bought a second, and then they bought a third. And then they started to tell other people what they were doing. And other people said, well, can you show us? And they're like, no, go talk to Trevor. And I think that's when the coaching bug bit, Ruben. And I just started to share with everybody what I was doing. And they all went out and started to buy and apply this as well.
On the real estate side, tell me more about how you started transitioning and evolving, because now you're not doing single family or duplexes. Did you go straight from those properties into multifamily syndication? Let me hear about that part. You don't hear you talk about that on the shows.
Yeah, absolutely. I literally stayed with, townhouses, condos, fourplexes, duplexes, single family homes. And you got to remember, in Vancouver, these are very large, purchases. This is a very, worldly city, a global city. And literally I built up a multi-million dollar portfolio doing this. And it really wasn't until I started coaching, other people like Joe Fairless, right? Or like, Andrew Campbell from Wildhorn Capital, or Todd Dexheimer, or, some of these other people, that I literally started to do passive investing. Otherwise, it was all active, or I was doing some development. I started to do some stuff overlooking the Pacific Ocean here in Vancouver. I started to invest with my brother in other areas. I mean, I literally went into Costa Rica and did some stuff down there. I went to Australia.
I want to hear about the Costa. Let's stop right there. I want to hear about the Costa Rica project.
Yeah, Costa Rica has not panned out with the entire vision that I had set out, but we did 2 projects down there. We bought into a resort that was already existing, and then we bought some raw land overlooking the ocean where my wife and I were going to develop 16 Airbnb casitas. And we set out, we got the deals done. But when you go off and you start investing in areas where you don't understand, let alone the government and how it works, and you don't understand the language, and you don't understand how bribes work and some of the other undercurrent, you can get, into trouble pretty quickly. And I'm proud to say that we haven't really gotten into trouble or lost money, but the vision that we had when we started this last year, we've kind of hit the brakes on until we get more clarity. But that's allowed us to go into Australia, where my wife had actually done her university. She got her international business degree in Brisbane. And we've now, invested in some real estate opportunities down there in modular home building, where literally companies create homes out of what are called SIP panels, structurally insulated panels, where they're fireproof, they're waterproof, they're termite proof. I mean, they're great for building materials. And I think that, as we move forward, we're going to start to see houses and buildings constructed out of different materials. And I'm excited to be at the forefront of that as well.
On that particular model, are you part of the business ownership that creates the modular homes, or are you buying the modular homes and then you're going to use them for cash flow?
I'm an investor. So I'm an investor in the company that makes the panels, that has the 18 different patents on these specific panels, that literally create them. And then they go off and they build anything from houses to duplexes to school, portables. They're doing a camp in the middle of Australia with some of this stuff. I mean, as we start to look at a bunch of different things, like growing different concrete products and there's just so much technology that's changing now. And, they're talking about even making these out of hemp. And last year, my wife and I, went into a syndication and we bought a 1,900-acre hemp farm in Colorado. So we're very well diversified, including self-storage units in Key West, Florida, and all these other things I'm talking about. At the end of the day, I feel that diversification is where not only can you get a nice return on your investment, but you're going to learn something as well. And I'm more about the learning than I am, making money. Of course, I want to make a return on my investment, but I want to be able to speak intelligently about a whole bunch of different real estate, options that are out there for people.
So what kind of returns are you looking for? What's attractive to you right now? Because I know that you're in some passive investing deals. Are you in some deals that are riskier than that are maybe a lot more lucrative, some business opportunities that pay better? Really what I'm curious is does the 7 to 8% pref and 70-30 split and that type of stuff, is that still attractive to you?
Well, sure it is for certain people that I know. I mean, I don't just invest in anything. I invest in people. So where I invest with, say, Joe Fairless and Ashcroft Capital, or I invest with Viking Capital out of DC, or Wildhorn Capital out of Austin, Texas, or Todd Dexheimer's group out of Minnesota, or Dr. Dan Hanford group in the passiveinvesting.com, or Dave Thompson, with Thompson Investing. I try to really go into things where if I'm going to make a 7 or an 8% pref, it's pretty much going to be a 7 or 8% pref, but they're now doing these A and Bs where you can get a 10% return. And when you start to take a look at some of these IRRs and what some of these companies, I mean, let's take Joe, for example. I mean, they've done almost $900 million in purchases of assets under management. Joe owns just close to 9,000 doors right now. And what they've returned when, they've sold off some of these properties at disposition, I'm not going to share those exact numbers, but boy, they are delicious. Like, they are highly lucrative, where Joe and his team have rinsed and repeated so many times, say in the state of Texas or Florida, where you're going to absolutely get, a nice little return at disposition that maybe other operators wouldn't get for you. There's a whole bunch of different factors, Ruben, that go into where Lisa and I put our money. And that's why we're going into hemp farms, self-storage, Costa Rica, Australia. And obviously we're doing a lot more impact investing now than we've ever done before. Things like water, energy, solar, a lot of really cool things. And if you really study Tony Robbins and you really look at, Tony being a big lover of Wayne Gretzky, and they're really close. And Gretzky used to say that he doesn't skate to where the puck is, he skates to where the puck is going. Well, Tony Robbins is doing that right now, investing in AI or investing in, different medical technology, robotics, stuff like that. So I'm telling you, it's an exciting time to be an investor because anything is possible.
I love that saying by Wayne Gretzky, I skate to where the puck is going. That's phenomenal. I'm going to have to use that. I'm curious about this because I've heard you talk about it. You are and were Joe Fairless's coach. So I'm not sure how much you'd like to talk about your clients, but I'd love to hear about the progression of what did you teach him to get him to where he's at? What was that like, that process of coaching him and seeing him evolve into what he currently is?
Well, I love the question, and I won't breach any client confidentiality here, but to be honest, Joe and I have coached together since 2013. So it's now 2020. We're still coach client. We've done some investments together. We've partnered up on things outside of real estate investing. I mean, I knew Joe before there was any Best Ever podcast. I knew Joe before any of the books. I knew Joe before any of the conferences. I knew Joe before he even owned an apartment building. And really, it was exactly what a coach does with everybody. We get crystal clear on what you don't want so that we can get clear on what you do want. And Joe didn't want to own single family homes because he knew that, if a tenant moved out or if a tenant wrecked the place, that he would have to spend a month getting it ready and spend 2, 3, 4, 5 grand getting it ready. And so we said, well, what is a vehicle that can help you get to your outcomes faster? And that's when we started to talk about apartments. And Joe started to read all the books, listen to everything that he could, people that had bought apartments before him. And then working with me, we figured out a plan and we reverse engineered the plan to get there. And so along that same path, as he was looking at apartments, I said, you're going to need to go out there and meet more people. And Joe goes, but I don't know how. And I said, well, you're doing these meetups. You're passionate about real estate. You're passionate about people. Have you ever thought of doing a podcast? And you know what Joe said to me that day, Ruben? He said, that's a stupid idea.
Really? Oh,
and I said, really? Well, if it's a stupid idea, as your coach, I challenge you to start a podcast.
Oh, I love that.
And guess what? He did. And here we are, 2,000 episodes later. I'm obviously been in on several of those, but I've had a unique opportunity to watch Joe interview Robert Kiyosaki and Barbara Corcoran and Jillian Michaels and Emmett Smith and all of these rock star people that he's had on. That led to him writing not one, not two, but three amazing books, putting on the best ever real estate conferences. He fell in love with this beautiful girl, Colleen, and my wife, Lisa, and I flew to their wedding in Cincinnati. They've since gone on to have a beautiful baby daughter. And now Joe is closing in on close to $1 billion worth of assets under management. And Coach T has had a front row seat to it all.
That's so cool. So I'm not qualified as a personal development coach, but I've stepped into that role. So I've gone through a couple of 90-day programs. And once you navigate through that, a lot of times they invite the people that have graduated to come back and coach with a coach of coaches. So you get coached on how to coach, and you see what kind of results you can produce through the people that you are coaching, because it's a direct reflection of how you do. And I love some of the things that you were just talking about, is challenging people to do things that they may not want to do, and making them almost feel like, getting them to break through their own resistance of what they think is foolish or ridiculous. And a lot of times getting through that mindset makes them a better person in the end. Do you agree?
Well, it really is. And I often say to people, when would now be a good time to get comfortable being uncomfortable? Because you know it, I know it, Tony knows it, Joe now knows it, that all growth happens just outside your comfort zone, right? It's like stretching a rubber band as far as you can. And then a coach says, I think we can stretch that a little bit wider. And then when you do that, the coach goes, guess what? I think we can stretch it a little bit wider. And you're afraid that that elastic is going to snap. But that elastic can actually stretch a long way. And that's what we do with their psychology. That's what we do with their strategy. That's what we do with their state, their story, and then the methodology. And again, real estate isn't anything new. I mean, people have been buying real estate for years. In fact, people used to go to war over land. So ultimately, if your listeners are listening to this, you obviously got a little bit of the woo-woo stuff that's not woo-woo on the front end. And now we're getting into the real estate portion where, look, if you got a desire to go out there and make an impact and an income, real estate is one of the greatest wealth vehicles on the planet.
It certainly is. So were you an apartment investor before Joe Fairless became your client?
Zero, not at all.
So then you grew with him into becoming an apartment investor yourself. As you're watching him grow, you yourself are growing as the coach and yet also the investor.
That's exactly right. And I got paid to do it. So it's almost like I get paid to learn how to do certain things. And it's not just apartments. I coach Fortune 500 executives at Microsoft, at American Express, at Blackstone, at JP Morgan. I get to work with world-renowned doctors and lawyers. I work with Olympic athletes. And so I really, have a really, really blessed position to be able to come in and have conversations with high-level people all day, every day, and get paid handsomely for it. So ultimately, at the end of the day, it's not just having me to support them. It's me using my own experiences, their own experiences, the collective experiences. I mean, what I could share with you after coaching millionaires and even a billionaire would obviously help anybody get clear on what they want, why they wanted it, and what they needed to do to go after it. So, 25,000 calls in. I'm very blessed to have gotten my black belt in coaching.
Yeah, that's amazing. All right, so we're going to go ahead and jump into the lightning round. Tell me, let's go ahead and get started. What is your favorite lesson that you learned from Tony Robbins?
Oh my gosh, that, life isn't happening to you, that life is happening for you.
I love that one. What about your favorite book? We haven't even gone into books at all, barely.
Hands down, Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill.
That is a great book. Your favorite morning routine? I think we went into it a little bit.
Yeah, it's really meditation. I mean, why get up and just get busy when you could literally set up your mind for success in just 30 minutes?
Okay, so favorite real estate deal you were a part of?
Oh my gosh, I've been a part of so many real estate
What's the best
deals.
one? What stands out?
Oh my gosh, Ruben, you're putting me on the spot. I have been a part of some very creative deals where, there's been some vendor take back stuff and there's been some creative financing. I guess, probably the one I'm most proud of is, stepping into my very first investment with Joe Fairless, because man, it was the start of something very special where, instead of me having to go out there and actively buy, I literally learned the power of passive investing. And I've done it multiple times with Joe and all the other people I've mentioned, but man, to get paid while you sleep without tenants, toilets, or termites is a pretty cool way to make money.
Very cool. All right. So I know that you ski. What is your favorite ski resort?
Oh my gosh, that's easy. That's Whistler, British Columbia, Canada. In fact, we're 90 minutes door to door, and that's where we held the 2010 Winter Olympics, and it is world class. So anyone that's never skied Whistler and you're a skier or a boarder, come on up and we'll treat you to some amazing powder.
It's phenomenal. I had the best snow I've ever ridden in my life in May one year.
Wow,
okay.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Favorite vacation you ever took?
That's easy. That's, my wife and I traveling to Byron Bay, Australia. And that's literally where we fell in love. And we absolutely loved it so much. Ruben, we went back there and got married on the beach there. It was incredible.
Okay. So tell me, where do you want to visit that you've never been to before?
Well, I'm hoping that Elon Musk can get me to Mars, because I think that would be pretty cool. But if we're talking about here on the planet, my wife and I are very, very well traveled. We've been, all over this beautiful blue planet, but there's different pockets of the US that I haven't seen. There's different pockets of Europe that I'd love to get to. Maybe I'd love to get to Dubai. That's next on the list. But ultimately, I don't think there's anywhere that I'd go that I wasn't fascinated with the people, the culture, the food, the wine. I mean, we're connoisseurs, we're foodies, and we love to drink some red wine. So anywhere where we could plug into that, I'd love to go.
Very cool. Thanks for entertaining me on that. I love that part of this show. All right, cool. So a couple of things that I want to go over. I want to actually dive back in. I don't think that I'm finished with the real estate stuff, but I want to dive back into a couple of things, which I'm not sure if we covered or not because we've gone over so many things. But the transparency that is required to be your full self. Let's talk a little bit about, a lot of people think that you have to be this masculine man and never cry. And in regards to being transparent and honest, they're very good at being transparent with the things that they like about themselves, but where they often shoot themselves in the foot is they may not say, this is the things and the trials and the tribulations and challenges that I've gone through and what I'm going through right now. You're not supposed to say that. There's these perceptions that you have. What is a professional real estate investor or businessman supposed to do? And you hide things from them. But that's not really being a man. And I love saying that. I love stepping into that, my wholeness and my authenticity as a man, the person that cries, the person that goes through trials, the person that has dealt with alcoholism, that's dealt with obesity, that's dealt with all kinds of issues, being broke, and trying to get out of a rut. People, they're afraid to talk about that because they don't want to be perceived. But in order to be, I think some people say, like, when you stop caring what other people think about you, that's when people will actually care about how you think. Have you heard that? Tell me,
Yeah.
let's dive into this.
Yeah, the soundbite to that, Ruben, is what other people think of me is none of my business, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's what I think of me in stepping up and being transparent, being real, being raw, knowing that nobody's got a straight path to success. In fact, if you look at the path of any entrepreneur, we fall down, we skin our knees. I mean, I don't know any real entrepreneur that's never lost money. I don't know any entrepreneur that hasn't had to deal with alcoholism for themselves or their family, right? I don't know of anyone that's ever literally, had a straight path to true love, or people that haven't had trouble conceiving a child. So whatever your challenges are, what if there was a gift in that? And what if by not speaking your truth, you were playing small to the fact that, where we say success leaves clues, that failure can leave clues for others as well, where literally you can be, do, and have anything you want, as long as you don't get caught up in the ego that says, I can only be that masculine man, when we've also got this beautiful feminine side to us that's meant to feel, that's meant to cry, that's meant to love. And so I think it's where the masculine blends together with the feminine in true authenticity, where we can just be ourselves and we don't have to run around and sugarcoat things. We don't have to blame or shame or justify anything, that we're going to have experiences in this roller coaster of ups and downs. But that is what the fabric of life is about.
I know that we were staying on here long for a reason, man. I think that's my favorite piece of content from the whole show. I love that. Okay, so one last thing before we wrap up, a couple last things. Mind, body, and soul. Tell me about the balance, from your perspective that you need to have in order to function at your best?
Well, again, I think that to function at the level that, I want to function at, I teach this thing called the ladder of success, and it's got 6 rungs on it. So if your listeners can draw out or picture a ladder with 6 rungs going up, the very first rung on that ladder is what we show up as poor, P-O-O-R. Now, I know that you don't do anything poorly and I don't, and your listeners don't, but some people show up poorly. And if you show up poorly today in your mental health, your physical health, your relationships, your finances, your career with your children, you're not going to get poor results by showing up poorly. You're going to get pain, P-A-I-N, right? So let's not play at the poor rung. Let's go up to rung number 2. And that's when you start showing up good. But I'm telling you, good isn't good enough. It's 2020 and there's still, 4 more rungs on the ladder, because if you show up just good today, you're just going to get poor results. So let's go up to rung number 3, because now we go from poor up to good, up to what we call great. And now you're a great husband, you're a great father, you're a great capital raiser, you're great at property management. But again, great is low, because if you show up great today, you're just going to get good results. So let's go up to rung number 4, because now it gets more fun. Because if you go up from poor, up to good, up to great, the 4th rung on this ladder is what we call excellent. And imagine what, life is like if you start showing up excellent in your diet, excellent in working out, excellent in how you communicate with your GCs, excellent in how you go out there and talk to an investor. Well, you're going to start to get what we call great results, but there's still 2 rungs left on the ladder. Stay with me. Because if you go up from excellent to the 5th rung on the ladder, Ruben, you get to the level that I love called outstanding. Now you're showing up outstanding in your career, your finances, your health, your relationships, your spirituality. You're reading books, you're listening to podcasts. When you show up at outstanding, you get excellent results. But there's one more rung on the ladder that I'm going to challenge you and your listeners to go to.
Do it.
And that rung number 6 is what I call extraordinary or extraordinary. So why be poor, good, or great, or excellent, or outstanding when you can show up extraordinary? And I'm telling you, when you show up extraordinary, you get outstanding results. And that applies to everything that you're going to do today, everything you're going to do tomorrow, whether it's personal, whether it's professional, whether it's in sports, whether it's in date night with your spouse, whether that's in real estate. It applies to everything. And so I invite all of you to take inventory of where you're showing up on that ladder right now, in your diet, with your spouse, with your real estate, with your investors, with your children, with your aging parents. You guys can go through whatever categories you want. And where you rate yourself today isn't good or bad, right or wrong, but you get to absolutely ask yourself, what do I need to do and who do I need to be to go up that ladder of success? What do you think, Ruben?
I love it. I'm so happy that you shared that with my audience. That was a really good presentation. You like Bob Proctor, so I kind of want to talk about one more thing that I went through. He used to be, I guess, the personal development coach associated with a network marketing called Liberty League. And we're talking about like 2004, 5, 6, 7, or 8, somewhere way back then. And I went to this thing and they had a Super Saturday training. And they had us write down some goals. And I want to share this particular goal setting session. And they said, basically write down, the things that you want to achieve in life and, really focus on it. Spend some time writing these down. And they gave us about 10 minutes. We wrote down our goals that had a list of the 10 most important things that I wanted to achieve. Like real estate investing. I wanted to own a specific amount of businesses, and I wanted a new ranch in Sedona, and I wanted to attract my wife, and I wanted a specific car, and I wrote all these things down. And they stopped us all, and they're like, so circle the most important goal for you. And for me at the time, to have a wife and to have a family and some kids, and that was more important than any of them. But I thought that I had to get these other things first. I had to be a successful real estate investor, had a nice car, have, the career, all of that stuff in place before my mind would allow me to go after my wife. And they said, circle the one that you want to get And then don't worry about the rest of them. Just go after that one. And all of the rest, if they're in alignment with you, will come naturally. And I was like, no, that's not true. I can't do this until I am successful. You know, I can't get what wife would ever want to be with me until I'm successful? And sure enough, like I tried to have some success and had some success, but things were just, it was empty. And when I finally went out and I manifested my wife, it was crazy how all of those other goals, they started just falling right into place. I got new real estate partners. I ended up in multifamily syndication. And it was really cool. So I wanted to share this story with you. Have you heard anything like this where you go after the person that you have to be in order to get your number one goal? If you are that way, you will attract all of the other goals naturally as a result of who you have to be. Have you
Well,
heard
it's a
anything
great
like
story. First off, congratulations to you. And again, it's great that you've known that now for, 12, 13, 14 years or whatever. And I think that that's partially true because I think that, we're able to absolutely do that, focus on our number one goal. But I believe that we're capable of even more than that. And so I teach this thing where people go, I either go after this or I go after that, right? So if your listeners were to write that down, I'm going to go after this or that. What I invite them to do is put a big X across the word or, and above it, write the word and. I'm going to go after this and that. Because again, our brain is capable of doing multiple things. And if you buy into Gary Keller's book, The One Thing, that's cool because I love Gary Keller and I think it's a great book. But I also believe that some people are multifaceted. Let's take Elon Musk. The guy's working on Tesla. He's working on SpaceX. He's working on Solar City, and he's working on the Boring Company. What would he say about Gary Keller's book? No offense to Gary Keller, but where some people are meant to go after one thing and focus on it and manifest it and then go after the next one thing and then do that and then the next one thing. I think there are people out there like myself, yourself, Joe Fairless. Joe can buy apartments. He can write books. He can put on conferences. He bought a lake house. He had a baby with his wife, Colleen. And so I think that, we're only limited by what we think we're limited to. What do you think of that?
True. I love the game of and it wasn't that I wasn't playing the game of and, it was the game, I was playing the game of or. I have to do this before I do that, and I could have gone for both of them really at the same time. But
well,
my mind, the roadblock that I had, it was saying, hey, you have to be this before you can go for this. And really, you could have just done all of it or any of it at the same time. Like
I think you got to be careful, though. I think that you got to be careful that you don't pigeonhole yourself in saying, in order to attract the woman I want, I've got to have the car and the suit and the watch and all that stuff.
That's what my issue was. When I got through that mindset, that's when it became a lot easier.
What if the universe was ready to introduce you to your soulmate even before that? Would you tell God, source, universe, I got to have my ducks in a row? Or would you be open to allowing things to flow exactly as the universe wants them to? I mean, you'll often find me, talking about what Wayne Dyer talked about, being firm at the roots. Like, let's say you're an oak tree and you're grounded and you know who you are, what you want, what you stand for. But up top, your leaves and your branches are flexible so that when the winds of change blow, they don't snap, or even in a big storm, you might be bobbing around firmly planted at the roots, but so flexible up top that whatever winds blow on you, you will absolutely work with the universe to figure out where to go from there.
Yeah, man, we're saying the same thing. Believe me, we are.
Love it.
Very cool, man. All right. So how do people get a hold of you?
Well, there's a couple things that they can do. If you want to find the easiest way to find me online, you can literally just go to my website, and that is trevormcgregor.com. That's TrevorMcGregor.com. Or for anybody that really is serious about, finding out how a coaching structure might support them. I mean, I'm at that stage of career where I only work with people who are defiantly committed to living in that level called outstanding or extraordinary. So if you're someone who's going to, invest the time, the resources, the energy, and you want to jump on and do a 45-minute consult call with me, they can just simply go to www.coachwithtrevor.com. That's coachwithtrevor.com. I only ask for people that are serious about looking to enter into a coaching relationship. But again, this is one-to-one coaching. It's not priced for everybody. But again, the return that you can get from working with someone like myself, who is an investor, who worked with and for Tony Robbins, that has done 25,000 coaching calls. I mean, there is experience. And remember that success leaves clues, and if you want to jump on a call and chat, let's do that as well.
Yeah, and Coach Trevor, your reputation is outstanding within the multifamily syndication space. At Todd Dexheimer's event, you just pointed to a bunch of people that were all standing in the back. You're like, all of those people have raised millions and millions and millions. I've coached every single one of them. And we're talking about people like Dave Thompson. I was like, wow, I want to be one of those people that's standing back there. I want him to point me out. So we're going to continue to talk about this.
That's right. We need to talk, Ruben. But yeah, Dave Thompson and I have done deals together. Andrew Campbell was there. Holly Williams was there. Jason Yarusi was there. Todd Dexheimer. I mean, the list goes on. And it's not me beating on my chest, because at the end of the day, I'm a guy that is really cut from this cloth, where real estate feeds my pocketbook, but coaching feeds my soul. And the secret to living is giving. And the best thing that we could do is to give this away. And that's why, for almost 2 hours here, we've been pouring it out to your listeners. That's probably crazy. One of the longest podcasts I've been on in the last few years. But I'm telling you, if you're listeners and you take just 1 or 2 or 3 of these things that we've talked about today, and don't just talk about it, but apply them, I swear to you, you will absolutely start receiving avalanches of abundance faster than you ever thought possible.
That's fantastic. What a great show, man. It flew by. It feels like it's been only 45 minutes or maybe an hour. We're almost getting close to 2 hours. All right, man. Well, with that, I'll let you go. Thank you so much for coming on, Coach. And I look forward to seeing you at the next event and staying in touch with you.
Thank you so much for having me on, and keep up the great work. Love your show and love what you do. And I love who you are. Keep it up.
Awesome. Thanks, man. Same way I feel about you, dude.
Thank you. Take care. Yeah, I won't be short on talking with you. It's going to be fun.